Hey everyone, in today's video, I'm going to walk you through the steps I take when teaching students how to write friendly letters. Now, I would usually do this in a first grade or a second grade classroom, but I love teaching students how to write friendly letters because it's a really applicable writing skill that they can use in their day-to-day lives. Now, often we don't write too many letters, but students are like, why am I writing a personal narrative? Why am I writing an opinion or an informative piece? Writing letters is actually a much more common thing that they might do as they get older, and that can transfer into writing emails, things like that. I did a video like this for how to write a personal narrative. It looks like this. I made that video a few months back, and essentially what I'm going to do is walk through each of the lessons that I have in my friendly letters writing unit in the SJT Writing Club. So this whole unit is already available in the SJT Writing Club. It's been there for a little bit. So if you are a member, you can just go ahead and download that. If you are not a member of the SJT Writing Club, no worries. You can either check it out below by clicking the link in my description, or you can simply take these lessons and ideas and apply them in your own classroom using your own resources. So if you're ready to dive in, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel, and let's go. Okay, on day number 1, when you're first introducing friendly letter writing, you are going to want students to be able to answer, what is a friendly letter? Now, I like to use a little anchor chart like this one just to quickly go over what a friendly letter might look like. And then I like to read a mentor text. Now, a couple of my favorite include Dear Mr. Blueberry. It looks like this. And also this one is so old, but it's so good. The Jolly Postman and Other People's Letters. You can pick any mentor text that has different letters written within it. If you're in the club, I do have a whole mentor text list over there for you to look through. But I tell students I'm going to read a story that features some friendly letters. And as I read these letters, I want students thinking of who is writing the letter, who are they writing it to, and what types of things are they sharing in their letter? I particularly love the Jolly Postman because inside the book they actually have these like envelopes, and you can actually pull out the letter from the envelope, and oh, it has it right here. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Bear and Baby Bear, and this is actually a letter from Goldilocks. There's just a ton of great fun connections in this one, and the postman is actually dropping them off at each of the different locations. So such a fun one. But like I mentioned, I also love Dear Mr. Blueberry. That one's also perfect for this. As I'm reading the story aloud, I would actually have a page like this under the doc cam, or you could just write these two things on the board, and you would simply stop and do like a think aloud as you are seeing the different types of writing. So this one is using Mr. Blueberry. So who is writing the letters? We have Emily and Mr. Blueberry. So the student and the teacher are writing letters back and forth. And then as we read the letters, I like to have them identify what types of ideas these characters are sharing. Information about herself. Emily shares that she loves whales. Information about whales, that they live in saltwater. They're asking some questions, and Mr. Blueberry is giving some advice. Now, I wouldn't have that take too long. It would really just be a quick think aloud, and you are modeling these types of answers, and you might have some student input from your class too as you write those on the board. Now, for the independent writing portion of day 1, I wouldn't have students start writing a letter yet. I would actually have them start brainstorming some different people they could write a letter to and what they might share with them. I like to have them do that using a sheet like this one. You can see here that I have 6 different categories of things people may add inside their letters, and then I want them to brainstorm people they could write letters to with these topics. So who could I write to say thank you? My parents, maybe? If I have some questions, I could write to a scientist asking them things. If I just want to express my love and gratitude towards someone, I could write to my grandma. If I wanted to share a life update, here's what's been going on with me, I could write it to a cousin. I might have an invitation I want to share with someone, a friend, and maybe I want to ask some advice, and I could do that to a principal. There's many different people that could fit in any of those categories, but I wanted to give you just some ideas to get started. To do this, I would probably model 3 of those in front of the class or with the class, and then I would have them go back to their seats with their brainstorming sheet and start brainstorming. Now, real quick before I get to lesson number 2, I usually teach friendly letter writing at the end of the year in first grade, But around December might be a nice time to introduce it depending on your students, simply because we are connecting with a lot of family and distant family and even friends over the holidays. So it's a nice time to kind of talk about writing a friendly letter to one of them. So that's why I'm putting this video out now. All right, now the students know what a friendly letter is. Day number 2, I like to share the different parts of a friendly letter. This, of course, is important because writing a friendly letter is different than writing an informative, an opinion, or a narrative text. The letter itself actually looks different than our other writing. To do this, I like to use an anchor chart like this one, where I point out the main parts of a letter, which include the date, a greeting, the body, the closing, and who it's from. Now in this anchor chart, you see only one way that you could write the date, one greeting, one closing. So what I like to do next is have students work together to do a parts of a letter sort. You could have students work with a partner or in a small group, and they will get different headers and different examples of types of greetings and bodies and closings. And students will have to flip it over and determine which part of a letter this belongs to and sort it in the right column. If you didn't want to have your students separate out during this time either, you can definitely do this with the whole class. I would have them sit in a circle on the rug, and you can flip over each part and they can help you kind of sort the things where they belong. This is when you'll really want to point out how after the greeting there's always a comma, the different ways we could write the date, different examples of our greeting. Also during the body of our paragraph, how that first part is always indented. And then of course how the closing and the signature are down on the bottom right side of our letter. For their independent writing today, I like to have them do something like this right here. Here, students will have to cut and paste the different parts of a letter. In this example, they are writing to their mom, but of course you can always change that to anyone else, or you can have them choose someone. And they'll have to cut and paste the date, the greeting, the closing, and the signature, and then they will go ahead and write in their own body. They might only write 1 or 2 sentences, and that is totally fine. This is just to get them started and thinking about that writing a letter process. All right, lesson number 3 is a fun one, and that is for students to really think about their audience and who they're writing to. In this lesson, I like to kind of pick 2 different people that we will be writing to, and they have to think about how those letters might sound different. This one, for example, I will brainstorm 2 different people. Here I have my sister, and I also have Mo Willems, an author that my students are familiar with. And I brainstorm some things I might share with my sister. I would tell her what I did over the weekend, what Theo and Calvin, my 2 kids, have been up to. I'd let her know I missed her, and I might have some questions for her. How are Billy and Ollie? When will she visit next? But I'm not going to ask those things to Mo Willems. That doesn't make sense. If I'm writing a letter to this author, I might let him know that I love the Elephant and Piggy books. I would ask him maybe a question like, how did you come up with these ideas? Are you writing any new books? What's your favorite book you've written? You can definitely ask for student input on this too, and this type of modeling really lets students see the different ways we write letters depending on who we are writing them to. Another fun activity I like to do with this is called mystery letter. Here you can see 2 different letters and they are missing their audience. So what I'll do is I'll actually read these aloud, and students will listen to the different types of information I'm sharing, the different type of closing, and they will try to guess who this letter may have been written to. Now there can definitely be more than one answer, but you'll see in that first one up there, it says, I love you. It asks how Grampy and Fluffy are. It says, I can't wait to see you for Christmas. So this one must be to a family member or someone that they're close to, especially because they say hugs and kisses at the end. And then on the bottom one, you can see it says, thank you for everything you've done this year. I got better at addition. I learned how to read. It talks about a field trip. It says, I'm ready for 2nd grade. I can't wait to see you in the hallway next year. So this letter sounds like it's written to a teacher or maybe a principal or a teacher assistant, but someone in a school setting. Again, it's just a great way for students to think about how our letters sound depending on who we're writing to. These also give students ideas of things they may include in their friendly letters. For independent writing today, students would use that same sheet I used right here with the Mo Willems and my sister Christina, and they will have to brainstorm 2 people that they might want to write a letter to. because they're going to start narrowing down this friendly letter, and then some ideas they may want to share with them. Okay, on day number 4, students are actually going to identify just one of those audiences to start their letter from yesterday. So yesterday they brainstormed 2 different people and some things they might share, but on day 4, the objective really is we can write our letter. This is where the writing of the letter begins. In my unit, I do have 2 anchor charts that you may want to use as review. One that shows we can write letters to with just some examples, and another about in letters we can share, just some things that we may add in our letters. I've shared this in all of my writing videos, but before I have students actually go off and do their own letter writing, or any type of writing, I like to model this first. So here I am showing them what their letter paper looks like and how the lines are up here for the date and the greeting. And I would think aloud and say, okay, I'm going to think about the 2 people I wrote about yesterday. I'm going to choose Christina to write a letter to. So up here, I would write today's date, I would write Dear Christina, and then I would simply think aloud and write down a few of the sentences that I may want to share with her. I really only encourage them to write 1 or 2 sentences at the beginning, and if they want to, they can use another piece of paper to draw an illustration that matches kind of what they're writing to also send to this person. Also, FYI, if you are in the club, those lines were the blank lines, but I also have some dotted lines. There are a bunch of different paper templates to meet your students' needs. All right, lesson number 5 is after students have written the beginning of their letter, they understand the parts of the letter, this is where I want them to try to add some personality to their letters. Now, to help highlight this, I love using this book right here. It is called Dear Dragon by Josh Funk. In this book, there's a little boy named George and a dragon named Blaze, and they're actually pen pals and they write letters back and forth. But within these letters, pretty much right away, they start sharing some things about themselves. George shares that he likes playing catch and soccer and building forts, and Blaze shares that he really doesn't like writing. But throughout the story back and forth as they write letters, they share little bits and pieces about themselves. Now, I like to explain to students that we can do the same thing in our own letters, and if we're writing a thankful letter, we can tell them why we're thankful for whatever we're thankful for. If we are asking questions or asking advice or writing to an author, we want to let them know why we're writing this letter to them. Why do we love their stories? Why are you asking for this advice? If you're writing to a friend or a family member, you might want to give them a little update about your own life. But we want to add a little bit about ourselves into this letter. As always, I will first think aloud and model this for the class. So here I added a whole sentence where I said, I have been having a hard time picking a rug for the living room. There are too many choices and I get overwhelmed. Again, I emphasize that if I were writing to Mo Willems, he probably wouldn't care too much about my rug choice for the living room, but my sister and I pick out furniture together, and this is something she would be interested in. After you model adding a sentence or 2 to your own letter, then students will go back over to their writing and they will see if they can add a little update or some personality into their letters too. All right, lesson number 6 is going to be asking questions to our audience. Now, of course, showing our personality, asking questions, not each of these little parts needs to be included in every friendly letter, but it's important as we go through this process for the first time that we really challenge students to try out these different writing strategies and these different things we can include, so that way when they begin writing more and more friendly letters, they'll have more to pull from. Now, if you read Dear Dragon yesterday, this is a great one to go back into and show how each of the letters that they write back and forth, Blaze and George ask each other questions to clarify and to get to know one another better. So here's one that George is writing and he's like, oh, you know how to skydive? That's awesome. He asks him if he has any pets, things like that. So in today's lesson, you want to challenge your students to ask a question to the person they're writing their letter to. And naturally, of course, you will model this first. Here is my example, and when I would model this, I would actually reread my letter aloud to students. I find that this gives them a good example of what they should do when they see their own writing. And then here at the end, I ask my sister Christina, when can you visit next and help me pick? I also point out again that I would not be asking, Mo Willems to come visit me and help me pick up my rug. That just doesn't make any sense. But asking my sister Christina, first I'm asking her, when are you gonna come visit next? And secondly, can you please help me because I already shared I'm a little overwhelmed. So this lesson's pretty simple. Show an example from a mentor text, model it yourself, and then students will go back to their own independent writing, reread their letter, and ask a question. All right, day number 7, we are going to talk about the closing of our letter. Now on a lesson like today's, I like to remind students of the different parts of a letter that we've learned. We may have already written the date if we started the letter, we already identified our audience, and we worked on that body of the letter. Now we need to add our closing. Now for the closing, this is where we want to wrap up our letter and we will have our actual closing and signature at the bottom. Here's my example that I added for today, but you can see here at the top, these are actually like my teacher notes in the SJT Writing Club. I always have modeled examples with extra notes for teachers to look at so they know what to do. But here with the numbered examples, I let students know if they're writing a thank you letter, they might want to thank them again and let them know you appreciate their gift. If they are writing a love letter and just like saying how much you miss somebody, they might want to remind them how much they love them and that they hope they see them soon. Here in my example, I said, give me a call or write me back as soon as we can so we can get a visit on the calendar soon. And then I chose to write love, Susan. This is also a good time to talk about appropriateness in those closings. For example, if we were writing a letter to the mayor of our city asking them for some advice or giving them some suggestions, we probably wouldn't write love, Susan at the bottom. After you model this, students will brainstorm what type of closing they want to write in their own letter, go back to their seats, add it, write that closing, and sign their name. We're almost done. All right, lessons 8 and 9 I'm going to combine together, even though I do them over 2 separate days. But this is when we actually edit and publish our letters. Now, I have shared this before, but I use an editing and publishing checklist. My editing checklist looks like this, and I actually have 2 different ones. Here's the top one and here's the bottom one. Because I make this unit for, first and second grade students, you'll really have to see which one most applies to your students. But here you can see students will look at things like, do they have spaces between their words? Do the sentences end with punctuation? Do they start with capital letters? And I also really like adding, did I reread my writing so that it makes sense? I do model this myself, going through each step of my own letter and checking off the different boxes, and then students will do it with their own letters. As for day 9, the publishing side of things, I actually have a different publishing checklist for every single different type of unit that I have my students write. Here is the one for writing letters, and I have a different one because they are all so specific to the genre. And I basically have students go over each different part. Did I add the date? Did I greet the reader? Did I add details about myself? And then of course on the bottom, it's always, do I have a detailed, colorful illustration? For this one, it depends if you had your students make illustrations for their letter. And then, is my handwriting as neat as I can make it? This is kind of that last call for students to really go through each part of this writing and make sure that they tried to apply it to their own writing. And on day 10 is when I have students share their letters. Now, at the end of each genre writing unit, I don't always have my students share their letters aloud. They might just share it to a partner, or they might just pass it in to me. It kind of depends. But our friendly letters are generally pretty short, and I find that this is a good unit to have students share their letter in front of the class to practice speaking and listening skills. So naturally, before they did that, we would go over what a good speaker sounds like and what a good listener acts like. So those are the 10 main lessons I teach when teaching first and second grade students how to write friendly letters. Now, once you have taught students how to write a friendly letter, I love it because it's easy to put those writing page templates of the letters in a writing center and as a fun little activity that they can do in some downtime or during literacy centers. They may want to practice writing letters to different people. Now, every single thing that I showed here in this video is available in the SJT Writing Club with much more. I even include some bonus and extension lessons for friendly letter writing. And all of the details that kind of come along with it, the rubrics, the mentor text lists, all of that. But again, if you are not a member, Those are the steps I take when teaching friendly letters. So I would love to know from you, do you teach your students specifically how to write friendly letters or how to write a letter in your own classroom? From what I've heard, it's about 50-50, so let me know down in the comments. I'm interested to hear. As always, I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. And remember, I did this same kind of walkthrough with personal narratives in this video right here. If you like this, I can definitely make more videos like this, kind of going through the steps I take when I teach each writing unit. Let me know if you'd like to see that down in the comments. All right, be sure you are subscribed, click that bell, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.